Flare from the sun can ruin your landscape photos. It can easily happen at any time and often without you realising. So in this video, I'll share how to remove unwanted lens flare from this photo using basic Photoshop tools. Looking at the starting image, you can see there's flare in several areas. Often lens flare happens when shooting towards the sun if there's dirt on the lens surface or filters. But even if you have spotless lenses, light can still reflect off surfaces of the filters and lens elements, which is what's happened here. You also might not realise the extent of the problem until you try opening the shadows in the image. That's why it's a good idea to check your image carefully by lightening it with a levels adjustment layer. You can do this in several ways, but an easy way is to click this icon at the bottom of the layers window. When you see the new layer added, change its blend mode to screen. This lightens the image, which can reveal lens flare in darker areas. It's better to find and fix this problem at the start of editing rather than after you've done a lot of work. Now that I've lightened this image, you can see there's a problem in the bottom right corner. You might also find it easier to spot problems by moving the levels center slider left and right. When you find an area with flare, make a note so you don't forget to fix it. An easy way to do this is to add a new empty layer. You can do this by selecting Layer, then New Layer in the Photoshop menu. Alternatively, you can click the New Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers window. Then, using the brush tool, outline any areas to repair in red, painting on the layer. Now we've identified areas with lens flare, we should turn off the helper layers before making the repair. I find it's best to group them into a folder so you can turn the folder off and on as you work. To remove the lens flare, we'll use three common tools from the Photoshop Tools palette. These are the Clone Stamp, Healing Brush and Patch tools. Each has features that make it well suited to certain types of repair. I'll explain the differences between the tools as I work on removing the lens flare. When you're using these tools, it's a good idea to work on separate layers because the tools are destructive. Now there are two tips I want to share with you to make it easier to produce a better repair. The first is to break the repair down into smaller areas. The other is to select the right tool for each area of the repair. With this image, it's probably best to make the repair in 4 sections, and each section will be on a separate layer. Let's start by adding a new layer using the new layer icon at the bottom of the layers window. We'll rename the layer to be Upper Flare because we'll use it to repair the lens flare in the top part of the image. Whilst we could use any of the 3 repair tools I mentioned, a larger area of flare like this is probably best tackled with the Patch tool. The Patch tool is good for replacing large sections with other areas of the image and then blending the repair with those surrounding areas. You'll find the Patch tool in the Photoshop Tools palette grouped with a few other repair tools. If the icon isn't visible, right-click on the small grey triangle to the bottom right of the icon. This displays all the tools in that group. It's possible the icon for any of these tools could be shown in the Tools palette. When using the Patch tool, it sometimes makes a perfect repair, but other times you might need to refine it using other tools. Before using the Patch tool, you also need to check the controls in the toolbar. You want to see that it's set to sample all visible layers of the image. What we don't want is to only sample the current layer because that's empty, so it won't do anything. We also need to use the Content Aware fill, which tries to match the repair to the surrounding areas. The structure slider is important to control how closely the tool tries to retain structure in the repair. With the lens flare in the cloud, we can reduce this to a low value like 2 because there isn't any structure. There's also a setting for blending the colours in the repair. We want to use the maximum value with this because it helps to blend the colours of the repair with the surrounding area. If we don't control these settings, it's easy to produce a visible edge in the repair. Now I can select the repair layer in the Layers window and draw around the flare using the Patch tool. Notice that I'm leaving a little space around the lens flare as I draw, which helps the Patch tool blend the repair. After drawing a selection, position the mouse pointer over the area and then click and drag. This moves the selection to a new area of the image which will be used for the repair. What we need to find is an area of the image that seems to match the area we want to fix. Then when I release the mouse button, Photoshop applies the patch to remove the lens flare. It's a good idea to check the repair by clearing the selection and turning the layer off and on. Then if you find a minor problem, rather than trying to use the patch tool again, you're better fixing it with the clone stamp or healing brush tool. Let's now tackle the lower part of the lens flare. As before, add a new layer to use for the repair and call this Lower Flare 1. We'll use this to remove the top half of the lens flare first because it looks like it will be easier than the area lower down. If we zoom into the area, you'll see that it has two parts to the flare. First, there are the coloured balls or spots, which we need to remove, but then there's a lighter strip running down the frame. I'm not too concerned with the lighter strip, as I'll explain later. If we want to, we can easily remove it by dodging to darknet. First though, we need to remove the coloured spots of flare. We can do this using either the clone tool or the healing brush. Small repairs like this tend to be better with the healing brush because it attempts to blend the repair with the surrounding pixels. Click on the healing brush from the Photoshop Tools palette. Notice that I'm using the healing brush for the repair rather than the spot healing brush. That's because it gives much better control over where the repair is sampled from. The important settings to check in the toolbar before making the repair are that it's sampling from all visible layers. Also, the brush hardness is set to around 80% to give a slightly soft edge to the repair. You can then pick the area to sample for the repair by holding down the Option key and clicking on it with your mouse. If you're using a Windows PC, hold down the Alt key whilst clicking. Then when you move the mouse pointer over the repair area, you'll see the samples superimposed inside the brush tip. Position the brush over the lens flare you want to remove. Size the brush so that it's slightly larger than the repair. You can do this by using the square bracket keys on your keyboard. Use the left key to reduce the brush size and the right key to increase it. The key to making good repair is to sample a point that matches the repair area. When you're happy with the preview, click to make the repair. After that, you can move to the next area and repeat the process. It often helps to paint around the area you want to fix rather than just using a single click. You'll see that as you move the brush, Photoshop refines the repair, blending it with the surrounding area. When it comes to the lens flare on the horizon, we need to take a lot of care in picking the sample. For this fix, I'll move the centre of the brush so that it's exactly on the horizon before taking the sample. This makes it easier to match the horizon in the repair. After cleaning up all the areas, I can move on to tackling the lower part of the lens flare. As before, we'll add a new layer to make the new repair so we don't risk messing up our other repairs. This part of the lens flare is going to be trickier to fix because of the detail and colour in that area. The patch tool won't make a good job of this, and whilst the healing brush may work, you'll probably notice the repair. What we want to do is replace the damaged area with other areas of the image. This type of repair is a good candidate for the clone tool. It means we can make an exact copy from multiple areas of the image to build up a repair. The key settings for this are to sample from all visible layers. I'll also set the brush hardness to around 60% to help blend the repair with the surrounding area. With the clone stamp brush, the sample point is critical because Photoshop doesn't try to blend colours or textures. The key is to sample areas that look like they will blend with the existing image around the repair. As you work, build up the repair gradually. Don't be afraid of sampling different areas providing the repair looks natural. It's a good idea to fix small areas at a time. Repairing a large area with a single sample is difficult and usually easy to spot. Finally, group the repairs into a folder to turn them off and on to check the overall effect. Let's turn on the original helper layers to check if we've missed anything. When I do this, you'll see the repairs I made show up, but then when I hide the layers, they disappear. I can also see that we still need to repair the corner of the frame. This is a large area that's well suited to the patch tool. This time we'll use a higher structure setting of around 5, but we'll leave the colour at 10. Before attempting the repair, remember to turn off the helper layers or you'll be able to see the repair later when you turn them off. As before, add a new layer to use for the repair. Then draw around the area and drag to find a suitable replacement. With the repair done, I'll move the layer into the group with the other repairs. Here's the original image, and here's the repair. The only trace of the lens flare is now the lighter area in the lower half of the frame. We could fix this by dodging to darken the area, but I'm not going to. That's because I want to add lens flare to this image in a follow-up video to create a dramatic image effect. Now, if making a repair like this seems complex, there's a trick you can use to make it easier, as I explain in this video. This is a very simple thing to do, but you need to remember to do it when you're taking the photo.